Hey, welcome back to another exciting episode of YOML, a year of magical learning. If you're new to the show, hello. And if you are, returning, hello again. And we are glad you came back to see us. And if you are liking what you hear, what you see, consider subscribing so that other people can see the video showing up on their feed and whatnot. So today we're on book 121. We want to talk about, the body and how it keeps the score. So basically it's a book by Bessel
Oh, you
van
want to
der
try?
Kolk,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
So
Bessel,
you
Bessel,
try
Bessel
it,
and
you
Fender.
try it.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay, you try it. Yeah.
So no, this is an interesting body. This is a book. This is actually one
Hmm.
that my therapist recommended to me a long time ago. It's called The Body Keeps the Score: Brain, Mind, and the Body and the Healing of Trauma by the author Bessel. And This is a really interesting book, honestly. It was talks a lot about like veterans and PTSD and their families and dealing with the painful aftermath of combat. Talks about alcoholics, talks about people with sexual abuse and assault, and talks about all different kinds of ranges of people that have
Hmm.
experienced trauma in their life. And then he explores like how it affects your body and how it affects your mind and how it affects people that have post-traumatic stress, basically. Like what, like and his the reason why the book is called The Body Keeps the Score is it's literally like your body remembers, like like how you felt in specific moments, times, and places. And it just it gets embedded in you, and it's like just a part of your being eventually at a certain point
Hmm.
in time, and it literally keeps the score, kind of thing. It knows what it
It,
felt like, and it remembers like whether you remember or you don't remember, like the body always remembers, kind of thing. So it was an interesting book. I actually would, if you're curious to learn more about trauma or anything like that in your life, like
hmm.
I would, and how it might impact you or might impact people around you or loved ones, or just curious to learn more about how the body processes trauma in general and your mind
Hmm.
processes trauma. Like, check the book out. I thought it was really good. Thought there was some really insightful comments for me personally. Like, the it resonated immensely just because of the trauma that my family's gone through over the past few years. And I could very much so resonate with pretty much everything that was being talked about. The uh, the irony for me is my treatment was this stuff, right? Like, was learning, was our values, was learning,
Hmm.
discovering Clubany, was discovering my own curiosity again, my own, using our imagination, ideating with you every night, coming up with this other stuff, doing a year of magical learning, like sharing these thoughts and reflections with people, writing a book, writing another book. I mean, it was like this was how I processed through a lot of this stuff. And it talks a lot about, like, this is, treatments. Like, I didn't mean, I wasn't looking for a treatment to my trauma. It was just being driven by my daughter and what I felt compelled to do. But
Hmm.
in a weird way, here we are, right? Like, have we've been processing this trauma. So anyway, it's an interesting book. Any thoughts? I don't think you've read this one, have you?
I have not. I've heard a lot of about it from you, but I have not read it.
Yeah. So I think the author actually has a little bit of like controversy around him. I I don't know. I looked him up afterwards. I feel like there were some people that are like, I don't know. But all I know is this book is pretty widely recognized as a really,
Hmm.
this guy is like his researcher that does this stuff every single day, like, and
Hmm.
has a facility that he's like the head of this facility anyway. So he I guess he knows his stuff, for the most part. He as Nassim Taleb would say, he has, like, this is a part of his life.
Hmm.
And he spent his life, you know in the weeds with this stuff. Like, this is what he was seeing from observations of from a clinical
Right.
aspect. Um so anyway, so the onto the reflection. So the reflection title for this one is "Trauma is an Imagination Thief, so reclaim your superpower." So just a quick recap. I think you'll enjoy this. Some of our our learnings we've had pertains
Hmm.
to humans and imagination thus far in our journey. Number one, from Sapiens, our imagination is our superpower. We've gone through that one. You know, that was the
Right.
first reflection from Sapiens. Infinite possibilities, thoughts become things. So if we can dream it, we can bring it into reality, into this world, right?
Hmm.
Moonwalking with Einstein, we just did this one recently. You know, so if you want to
Hmm.
create new memories that stick, use your imagination, right? Because the best memory
Right.
athletes in the world are essentially most creative and imaginative people, because we
Right.
think in stories, we think in in visuals, we think in not words or numbers. You know, this is how we remember, is we remember in stories.
Hmm.
And and then from Why We Sleep, um the the term sleep on it, right? Because like when you're sleeping on it, you actually is when you learn something new and you go into that REM sleep. That's when your brain is rewiring everything, right? You know, it's and I mean, I know you know this, but like that's when our imagination is like in hyperdrive, right? Like that's when we see like these vivid dreams and everything,
Hmm.
when our body shuts down, feels safe, and all that good stuff. That's when new memories are cemented in your mind, is a lot of times during sleep. So what does all this have to do with trauma and the body keeps the score? So here's my
Hmm.
personal theory after reading this book, and this is the thought that this book generated in my own head. My theory is that trauma is the death of your imagination, and here's why. So just going off of my own lived experience with trauma, and going through what we went through with my daughter, having her be born at 22 weeks and 6 days old, weighing only 1 pound, being thrown into the NICU fire, and where it was literally life and death every single day every day for life for the most part,
Hmm.
to losing our daughter, to watching her take her last breath, to having to make the call to end my daughter's life, to then finding ourselves back in the NICU, only a few months later for another 92 days with our son, being born early as well, but also getting home. But it was still traumatic, right? Like, I mean, it was
Right.
re-traumatizing because it was only a few months later, right? Like 11 months after she had passed away. Um, so for me, the reason why I'm bringing this up, just as a reminder, like I vividly remember how I felt the, the days, weeks, and months after Amelia passed away. I wrote a lot about it in the book. I can't imagine. And it sucked. Like, I mean, I can tell you every single thing in my being was, I could be sitting at a table with my family or close friends. I could be reading a book. I could be, going on a run. I could be doing whatever I was doing. It didn't matter. Like my brain and my memories and my thoughts were on April 22nd, 2020, the day that my daughter died. I mean, I could, I could, it might look like I was present with somebody, and it might look like I was, thinking about what was going on. Trust me, like every thought for a really long period of time was wrapped up on that day. Like,
Right.
and like, I mean, so much so that, like, the way that in understanding this book now, like trauma, you just relive the same memory over and over and over and over again, right? Like, and you're really stuck in a place where you're never creating new memories anymore. So this is where it made me start to think, as I was kind of reflecting after I learned more about this book, trauma stops you from creating new memories. And so if we're going to go back and, talk about all the other stuff that we've learned from the year of magical learning so far, if imagination is our superpower, and we can literally, create new memories by thinking in vivid stories and pictures and, all that other stuff. When trauma is affecting you and you're living in it, you stop creating memories. So what's the antidote to that? Use your imagination and create new memories, right? So how do you do that? That's the big question, right? So maybe that's the
Hmm.
truth. So that's why I called trauma like an imagination thief. It just wants to steal your imagination from you. It wants to just take all of your ability to go create those new memories and those new pictures in your head and the new,
Hmm.
questions and things like that. And it's just like, nope, you're gonna go right back here to, this is what we know and this is what we care about, and you're gonna stew in this moment. And I'm sure there's a reason for that. I'm sure there's some, deep-seated thing where I had to go figure that thing out. Otherwise, like, my body would have probably just kept the score for the rest of my life and been, in pain, feeling that, but not processing through it. So maybe trauma's not a bad thing. Nobody wants it, but I'm sure there's some functionality and purpose to everything, right? As we talked about on this journey. But that doesn't change the fact that it's still a happy, healthy, functioning human being is when we're using our imagination and creating new memories and being creative out there. So that's when you deploy your magical learning. Fill your head with new ideas, fill your head with new thoughts, fill your head with with new people, with new questions, with new whatever. And slowly but surely over time, I promise you, like, I mean, if you're ever going through trauma or anything like that in your life, I promise you, your imagination will start to come back. I promise you, those questions, the curiosity will start to come back. And then once that happens, then you're creating all new memories. The trauma doesn't hurt as bad anymore. You know, it's not that the trauma doesn't still exist in my life, and I don't know what happened. I still know how that felt, but it doesn't affect me going forward in terms of creating new memory and using my imagination and using my superpowers that we have as humans, to keep living a life of purpose, right? So that was the reflection from this book. I know it's kind of a unique one, but yeah, I'll pause there. I'd love to get your thoughts.
Yeah, I mean, I do agree with what you said. I mean, I read the book, and even though I don't have the first-hand experience that you have, but the memories of the book that I've read, it's still with me today. I can recall the image of you holding baby Amelia against your chest and taking her off, deciding to taking her off of the you know, the machine. And to me, that's even reading it, it has carved a deep hole in my mind. And that is so vivid, even as an outsider looking in. I mean, it leaves you a very, very deep impression. And so I can't even imagine how deep that impression would be on your mind. And so for me, when I think about because I always like to compare how our brains work with the flow of the water down the mountain, right?
Mm-hmm.
You know, when the water flow down the mountain, it's going to pick random path, but as more of the water droplets, you know, kind of follow the path, it start to carve into um the earth, like the rock, the a path, a you know, like kind of like um the curve and the sway of the river. I mean, and that's
Right.
how a river is created. It,
Right.
you know,
Right.
essentially, like a lot of rain comes down, and essentially one of these days, the more drops of rain goes in one path, and eventually it carves that little channel that we now call a river. And so for us, it's the same thing in terms of reinforced learning. The more we do something, the more we are better at it because we have the same mechanism to build that connection or build that channel from
Right.
one endpoint to the next endpoint. And so for me, in the analogy of the drama, it's like you going down the path on a river and suddenly there's a deep drop, right? In a hole. Imagine it's not water, but it's a deep drop in a hole where you can't get out. And to me, drama in my mind represent a trap that you basically trap
Yeah.
inside a deep well, right? It's so deep that you can't get out, and all you can think about is whatever that you surrounded by the drama. You can't see anything else. The only thing you can see is drama, right? The only thing
Yeah.
you can see is your atomic bomb. And for me, you know, that's how I'm thinking as you were talking about your reflection is, you know, you suddenly walk down this path where a lot of people have gone before, and suddenly the earth basically collapses like a sinkhole. It collapses and goes down. And that's to me represents drama. And once
I'm
you're inside that drama, right? The only thing you can think about is that piece. What else can you see?
nothing. I mean, it's
Nothing.
literally that's all you can see. That's all that you can think about. That's all you dream about. That's all that you question about. That's all. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
that's it. Like, I mean, like, I know that I'm not alone in saying this. I'm not going to speak for every person that's ever had trauma because trauma is different than every single person, right? And it manifests itself differently. But the one thing that I do know is whatever that trauma was, like you're
It
stuck in that moment.
imprisons you.
Like, yeah, exactly. You're stuck in that moment. Like, I mean, I really love your analogy. I would tweak it just a little bit, actually, though. I would say instead of the sinkhole dropping down, if we think of like water cascading down a mountain and it's curving
Mm-hmm.
out your river and all that good stuff, I feel like we could call that water curiosity, imagination, creativity, questions. You know, that's what the water is to me, right? You know, like as long
Mm-hmm.
as that's going on, like there's always a trickle going down, and it will find to carve
Right.
a new path, and it'll keep going, right? I feel
Right.
like it's more like somebody just turned the tap off on the water. Like, I mean, like it's, you had a channel going and then all of a sudden the water just doesn't exist anymore. Like there's just no more. I do love your analogy
Right,
of it just dropping
right,
straight
right.
down,
But
but
the thing is, you get stuck. The point is, you get stuck at that
right.
moment,
Yes.
right? And it may not be a perfect analogy, but because I'm trying to use the analogy I used before with how the brain works with the river, like
Right.
you basically entrenching
No, I love it. Yeah.
your connection between the two. And if you use that analogy, it's basically for whatever reason at that moment in the trauma event moment, you get stuck there, you get imprisoned there, right?
Right.
And so you're gonna sit there for hours on end, and for days, and for months, and sometimes years, sometimes your whole life. And you see like dramas and like and I agree with you, people handle drama differently, and people experience drama differently. So the outcome is gonna be greatly vary from one person to the next.
Right.
And some people don't never recover. Some people never climb out of that hole or never get unstuck. It's just because the only thing they see is the drama. The only thing that is in their mind is the image of the same. I mean, I wouldn't call that a dream, but it's like a nightmare because you don't want it. You don't want
Right.
that image. Because for me, even when I can't, like I say, I'm not even like in the same level as you by far to even imagine the responsibility to take your daughter off of the lifeline. I mean, for me, even to think about it, I mean, it's so vivid and it's so hard in terms of how you cope with that image, even as an observer. That is how deep these dramas are. These trauma are, right? These trauma are so deep that it's hard to get out without help,
I agree.
right?
I mean,
So you're
yeah,
gonna need somebody that get you unstuck. Just let's take for example the example of the water and somebody turn off the tap. Like, imagine you in a canoe, right? In a canoe down the river, and suddenly all the water turns off. Why that canoe gets stuck? It doesn't
right.
move because there's no water. It doesn't flow, so there's no water, so you get stuck. So the only way for you to get out is you
Turn the tap on.
have yeah, you have to continue to let your imagination run again, right? And exactly, you turn the tap on, and when imagination runs again, the canoe or whatever is going to start to float,
Slowly lifts up.
and
It
it
doesn't
starts to
happen
move.
overnight, like
Right,
and then it gets unstuck, and then you're back on your life path and your purpose, and
right.
and like that's when trauma no longer, the
Have a
body
hold
doesn't.
on you.
Yeah, exactly. That's when trauma. I like the title, "The Body Keeps the Score," but I don't think that that's forever. Like my body does not feel this trauma anymore, and I can say that. Like somebody could be like, "Well, he doesn't know what
I
he's
mean,
talking
I
about."
think I
Like
think it does. I think
no,
it
no,
does.
it
I mean,
does.
the body
It
keeps score.
it
Just that the water that the carving of the water is still there, but the imaginations and the creativity you bring is the level of the water. It raised above the threshold for you to move along. So
correct.
deep
Yeah.
under the water,
Oh, it still
the
exists for
carving
sure,
and the trench still exists. So the body
for
still
sure.
keeps score. So it records everything. It's just that you have to have something stronger than it, much more powerful than it, to overcome its hold on you.
100%. So I mean, sorry, I misspoke. I was not impeccable with my words on that. Like, don't get me wrong. Like this trauma will never leave me. I'd say this all the time. Like
Mm,
that is the why. Like whenever I don't want to do something, I think about what would Amelia do,
mhm.
and I remember everything that she went through and everything that we went through together, and I'm like, look, if she can do that, I could do anything. You know what I mean? Like get your shit together, get up, and get to work. Get to
Right.
work, live in your purpose, like whatever that may be. And that's only used for me. Like that's how the trauma
Hmm.
impacts my life these days, versus like, but to your point, like you're dead on. Like it's, I'm now floating above it now, and my stream has resumed carving out new memories and things like that going
and
forward.
now you can pattern and navigate to the directions and core values that you want.
Exactly.
You know, and to me, this is important. It's not for everybody, but the lessons here is that if you happens to be in that rut, in the dramatic prison, right? This is one of the solution that will get you out of it.
I don't know that there's another solution. I mean, in all seriousness, I mean, I don't know how else you overcome being stuck in a moment and stuck in the mud. Like to your analogy, because I think it's a great analogy.
I mean, a lot of
Like,
people, a lot of people commit suicide. That's a
well,
way out.
okay, sorry. Yes, I guess there is other
technicality.
Yeah, right. I think your analogy is so spot on though, because like even I think everybody has trauma. Like no matter if it's like some crazy bad trauma or some light trauma, if you got fired from your job, it's still trauma. Like, you know what I mean?
Right.
Or you have your kid went to the hospital the other day or something like that for I had a colleague that her daughter had spinal surgery because she had like what do you call it when you have like your back
like a curve spine.
Yeah, like a curve, like whatever that is. And she had to have this correction, and like that was probably traumatic. Where she had a very intense surgery, and then she had recovery where she had to do all this stuff for like 6 weeks, but anyway, she's not going to forget that, and she's not going to forget what it felt like to go through these things. Anyway, her whole life had to change, like, and that's traumatic. Like, I mean, it's everybody has different degrees of trauma, but I love your analogy of like that sinkhole, I guess, if you will, of what your canoe falls into. It could either be just below the surface, and then you just need a little bit of, and the tap turns off, and you just need a little bit more water to get you back up to floating and moving on. Or you fall way deep, and then you need a lot of water, to be able to get you back to, whatever life course and purpose path that you need to be on. So and a lot, and to fill up that like reservoir, like you need to.
It takes more imagination, more curiosity. Exactly.
Yeah. It's questions. It's learning new things. It's all the stuff that we talk about. But like that is the tap that kind of turns on here. So
and this is one of an answer that is suitable for people in a similar situations. I mean, like I said, I can't say this is the only, because I don't know shit and you don't know shit. So we know what we know, and we don't know what we don't know, and we don't know what we don't know. It is that number is large. It could be 99.99%. We don't know what we don't know. So, but this is like a good solution for kind of getting out of this tricky hold of the drama, because drama to me it's powerful. It could drown you, right, or it could make you stronger. It just depends on how you solve the your own dilemma.
I totally agree. And if you don't have trauma though, like that's the beauty of all this whole journey that we're on. And we talk about this all the time. Like you can still do these things and still lift your, you can still fill your river, higher and higher and carve out better life paths without having to maybe necessarily go down into an atomic bomb pit, you know what I mean? That's left by some crater. So like you could still do all these things, and you could still get the benefits of being more curious, creative, playing, embracing your inner humanity and all the other rules that we're learning and all the other lessons that we're learning across this whole entire journey. So I want to make sure that we all note that this isn't just applied to trauma, but this certainly trauma is a unique situation where it's like, look, the tap is off, like you have to go restart your tap, otherwise you're going to be going nowhere. And quick question for you: what do you think the purpose of trauma is? Like, I mean, what do you think the purpose of everything has a purpose, right? Like, what do you think the purpose of trauma is?
The purpose of drama is, for me, it's for the body to tell you, hey, don't do that ever again. Just like you put your hand in a hot stove, it hurts you so much that you would never, even for a second or a fraction of a second, forget it a second time. I will only put my hand on a hot stove once in my life. You think about it. It is a way for your body to tell you this is dangerous. And
Right.
it is so dangerous that I'm going to pound this into your head. I'm going to carve a deep scar into your brain that this thing, right? You don't do that. And you need to remember it. Even with a slight trigger of will remind you of the experience that you have when you did it. So because for example, for any of these atomic bomb, it's one of those things where it is you're on the verge of death. You're on the verge. I mean, you are close, and your body is try to keep you away from the edge, and so it has to beat you into that it carved the deep scar into your brain for you to make
It's gotta
sure
beat
that
your
it
elephant
never.
over the head. Like
Yes.
it's gotta just maim your elephant basically, where
Mhm,
where
mhm.
everybody can see the scar forever and ever, and say like,
Right, the scars
yeah,
and like even like slight trigger reminders would triggers the memory of that. And because like these images, imagination you have for these drama, they're so vivid. Why are they so vivid? Because they get copied over and over and over again. And even after that, the brain makes you remember the images and kind of sears the images into your eyeball. And so
it's
you never forget. Like
well,
for
it's not
me,
even
it's
just
like,
that. You don't forget all the senses. You don't forget the 5 4 3 2 1 that I just learned in
mhm,
the how to
right.
think like a monk. It's the five things that you see, the four things that you can touch, the three things that you can hear, the two things that you
Mhm,
can smell, and the one thing you can taste. Like I literally, I, I will never forget. Like you asked me to do that right now. There's not too many memories in my life that
mhm.
I could do that for. With everything with Amelia, like I could
It's
do
like
that in like
the trench in the ocean.
right.
Those
Yeah,
are
the
the
Mariana.
memories, like a
Yeah,
trench in the ocean. Yeah,
right.
it's so deep that there's nothing that compares to it, right? So when you look at it, it's gonna say, hey, how much of a water pressure do I have in this area? Well, you have a lot of water pressure just because that trench is huge.
Right. Yes. Yeah. No, you're it's a really interesting analogy. It's something I'm gonna probably stew on, or probably turn it
I
into a
don't know if we
truism or
can turn a
something.
truism
Yeah,
into
I know.
like turn into a truism.
Right. Well, the visual, truisms don't just have to be words. Truisms could be pictures, like it could be, like you said with the sloths and all the
Slash and
animals in
cheetah, right?
the class, or whatever,
Right,
staring at, learning this, learning a lesson that they all should be a monkey or something like that,
right.
or a canoe floating down a river, with like a
Yeah.
trickle
Well,
coming down from
I'm
the,
a visual learner, and like
right, right,
I'm like strongly more visual than any other senses. That's why for me is my eyes and my imaginations is my strength. But not only that, because I don't have a balance of it, right? And so most of what I do is in the visual versus the other stuff. And
right.
yeah, so
Well, that's
most
how
of
we remember.
what yeah, most of what I do is always like, hey, what do I see? What do I imagine?
Right.
And that's how I learn. That's how I keep my lessons that I learn, from these reflections. Is what kind of image can I carve? Just like a beaver must dam. I imagine a beaver in the water with its water coat pelt, right? And talking about the classroom where you have a sloth and a cheetah trying to run really slow. I mean, these kind of imagery, it it, it guides me towards my core values and guides me in my life.
Yeah. No, I love it. I mean, we think in stories. I mean, this is what
We
we're
do,
learning,
we do.
and this is what we're discovering for ourselves, and it fills up our stream a little bit more every single time when we
Yes,
think of these
exactly.
things,
It
and
does.
it keeps you
It keeps you afloat.
yeah, it keeps you afloat, and it keeps you floating down the path toward your purpose of whatever that is. Like we don't know
and,
where we're going, but we
and it
know how
allows
we'll
you
get
to
there. Right.
move. It allows you to
Right.
move because once
Right.
you float, you can choose the direction you want to go move towards, right? But
And
if
if you
you
don't,
in a you you're stuck in a little crevice or rut or sinkhole or whatever you want to call it, depending on the size and degree of your trauma, right? You're not gonna be able to choose the directions of where you want to go. It's gonna keep you there until, if you give in, or somebody else come along and help you out. And so,
100%.
it's up to you. So, can you control the water that's flowing down that river?
Here's a question for you. Another question for you. Can you ever fill your river up too much?
I think so.
What do you do then? You just need to go take a break, or get to, how do you strategically stop the water for a while, to just go on a pleasure cruise floating down the river,
right, because I mean, we talking about the molecule of more, right? And we're talking about the molecule of of now, right? So it's a balance between the two. You can't be living in these imaginations all the time. You still have to stop and smell the roses. You still have to carry that spoonful of oil walking around a palace, right? It's the same story. It's the same lessons and concept that it keep reiterating over and over in multiple books that we read in company.
So where does the water go, though? What happens when you get too full? Where's the water go? How do you get rid of the water?
So what happens when there's too much water? It becomes an ocean, and you're in the middle, and you're in a canoe in the middle of the ocean. What do? Where do you go? Where can you go?
Yeah,
exactly. You lost. That's why I say you don't want. You still want to see scenery. You still want trees and animal. If the water rise so high, the whole earth is water, and you are basically a single person in a single canoe in the middle of the ocean.
So then the question, or the answer then maybe just balance, right? Like you can't imagine all day.
I mean, go back to the alchemist, right? The alchemist say, hey, you take this spoonful of oil. I want you to walk around the palace, but don't spill it.
Right.
Then
you still have work to do. Like
you still gotta enjoy the palace and the scenery. You can't just watch that spoon all the time, or then you can't watch the palace and then just forget about the spoon, right? You have to have balance. So balance is a lesson that has been reiterated and reaffirming among multiple books that we have come across in company. And I think that's the core values.
Right.
That's the core values, the top core values of company. It's about striking that balance.
Yeah, it's never going too much. What was the book about the rain one? Too much and too little, or something like that, anyway, I can't remember the book. The book about rain.
You have too much rain. What happened? You have too much rain.
You flood. I mean,
okay. What happened? You don't have too little rain.
Everything dies.
So that's what I'm saying. Like, you can't have too much and you can't have too little. I mean, it's the same lesson that's reaffirming over and over again in every single most of these books that we've read. Is there's a balance between, like, the molecule of more, for example, right? It said, hey, you have the dopamine that you want to live in the future, and you keep wanting more and more and more and more, but eventually, where did it stop? So you have to have the molecule of now to come back and pull the molecule of more back a little bit and control it, so that you can enjoy the here and now, enjoy the cake that you bake, right? Rather than the moment you bake the cake, and then you just, your mind is somewhere else, right? You're not enjoying the companies of the people around you. You're sitting and having conversation with somebody, but your mind is elsewhere. Your mind is, in a bowling alley or a golf course or whatever. Why somebody is here is important to you. And then suddenly, when you wake up one day and you're, 99 years old in your deathbed, and you wish you have more time with the daughter that you never pay attention to. Right. And so people have that kind of experience all the time. To me, it comes down to how much regrets do you have in terms of what you did not do. It's not what you did. It's what you did not do. Right.
I agree.
You want something, right? Did you it? Did you even try it? I mean, even you try and you fail, you still feel proud, because the experience is what counts.
I agree.
Seen things, right? But you will regret not doing things that you want.
Agreed. So in the spirit of balance, I say this has been a delightful conversation, and I say that
We put a
we
cover
hit
on
our
it
we hit our
and
we hit our we hit our ham horn, you know, our wah
uh-huh.
wah wah wah, you know, and
Wah,
we
wah,
call
wah.
we call this one good, and we let Chris go to bed because his body hurts
Yes,
because
yes. He needs a he
he
needs a balance.
yeah, I need some rest because my
Recovery,
because
right?
yeah because this tennis match today killed me. So but yeah, no, that was a ton of fun either way. But great discussion in general. So the question we can leave with anybody tuning in here is, you know, have you lost your superpower of imagination to drama? And if so,
Mhm.
you know, how can you take it back and reclaim your mind? You know, fill up that stream. Figure out get those start finding new questions to go populate in your head. You know, learning
Yeah,
new
we love
ideas.
to
You know, yeah,
hear the way that you try to cope with the drama that you
right.
have.
And
Because like I said, you know, this is one of the way I know. I just don't know that any other ways.
right. And on a serious note, like, I mean, trauma sucks. Like, and
Yes.
I know where if you're living in that world, I understand where you're at, and what we're here to help. Like, I mean, this is a part of our purpose is to serve and to help other people, to help them to dig themselves back out of that hole and to regain, you know, their to find their purpose and fill up their streams, I guess, if you will, and send them
Mhm.
down that path with a bunch of other people that want to help them along the way. So if you guys are if somebody ever watches this and they're want to talk to us, either one of us, like I'm always happy to chat, and you know, don't hesitate to reach out. So thanks for tuning in, and we will see you all tomorrow.
Yes, and stay balanced.